In-class tutors, we are more on the spot. So when the teacher assigns something for that particular day, there'll usually be more, there'll be like parameters that you're operating within. If there's a day where they're outlining or mind mapping or things like that, you'll have more specific assignments to do. There are days when they're just reviewing and revising, excuse me. So those are more important, or those particular days you'll have your work, set out for you. I guess what I'm trying to say is that usually the in-class sessions are more definitive, what you're going to be doing that day, as opposed to something in the center that could, run the gamut. I mean, there could be a million different things that we're going to do.
So an in-class tutor is basically, you're going to have days when you actually go into a classroom, a freshman composition classroom or any other class, but you actually go once a week and you sit in for that class, consistently, same class, same tutor, and it's a really great way to actually create a bond with the students in that class, and it's a great way to get people into the center as well. But basically when you go in there, you want to talk to your professor, your in-class professor, before your first day to get a sense of how they want to use you. Different professors have different techniques for in-class tutors, but basically you're just going to be doing what you do in the center quicker with more students in the same amount of time. So it's a way to kind of touch base with students, and it's really a great way to encourage students to come to the center.
In-class tutoring is interesting. It is different. It's putting on a different hat for sure than when you're sitting in the center waiting for students to show up to you. It's very much more about going to them. In the center, you're like sitting at this table, they're bringing them into it, you're going out and greeting them and coming back to this spot, and you maybe have a little bit more confidence because it's like your spot, everybody has their table they sit at, Going to the classrooms will require you to go and actually talk to the students, try and get them to share information with you. There's less willingness, I think because they're also among their peers, they're all looking at each other, maybe listening in on what they're sharing, because you're in close quarters, that can add to that kind of tension for them of wanting to share. So if you can break the ice right away, for me it was very helpful because the professors themselves were, especially in the 102, 103, were very welcoming to the in-class tutors, and they will, introduce you when you first come in, make your personality and your presence known right away. For me, my personality would be more joking with them, trying to make them laugh to feel more comfortable, so that I kind of kept that going, and then they felt maybe a little bit more approachable towards me. But your job there is to, be not necessarily in so many words an assistant to the professor, but being there to kind of help. Sometimes it's a translator, they'll sit there and be nodding and looking at the prompt on the board, but then once you sit down and look what they've been working on, you realize maybe there's something lost in translation there, and maybe they don't feel comfortable talking to the professor about it.
For new in-class tutors, advice that I would give is trying to use humor. At least that's what I did, to try and broach students with the subject of helping them, because some of them can be a bit defensive because they think you're there to judge, and just try to make them, open up with something you think, and if it makes them laugh, then they're more than likely open for you to sit down with them and talk to them about the paper. Obviously not so much that's going to disrupt the rest of the class, but a chuckle, one or two chuckles is a good sign, and you could probably get them to, let them look at your paper.
If I had to give any advice to a new tutor about in-class tutoring, I would definitely tell them to try to get to know the students. It's easier for somebody like me to say that, who's pretty outgoing. I'm a little older, so it's, I'm not too worried about what anybody thinks. But when you're working with someone that's the same age, somebody might be a little more nervous. I can understand how you might approach some of it with trepidation. But I would just, the more you can get to know a student, the better. And it just makes it easier. Plus, when you become more familiar with the class, people will start to approach you too, which makes it a lot easier, instead of sitting there hoping somebody, needs help.
I would say for new in-class tutors, the first time you go, definitely make sure you've connected with the professor before you show up. That way they know your face, you know theirs, and also it gives you a chance to get a sense of how they want to use you as an in-class tutor. Some professors are going to actually assign you to students every day and say you're going to work with those 4 today on this assignment. Others will just kind of say, fit in where you fit in, see what works. So getting a sense of that kind of thing before your first session in an in-class is really helpful, because you have a sense of understanding as to what it is you're really getting into.
Get yourself known right in the beginning. If you go in there and they don't know who you are or know why you're there, they're not going to utilize your services as much. But if you can go in there and make yourself known to them and make yourself seem as welcoming as possible, you know, then you're going to have more to do, because they'll be more willing to work with you, and you can foster some cool relationships. I still see students around school that were in previous in-classes that I can say hello to, and sometimes ask how their classes are going, you know, and that kind of, bringing that kind of personality to it will be meaningful to them as well. Because it's interesting, I heard from veteran tutors when I first came in who had previously in-class tutors years before talk about how when those in-class tutors came in, they all thought they were rock stars and they didn't want to talk to them and they were nervous and all this stuff. And so being on the other end of it, it's kind of funny to think that you might have thought that way, because you can come in and be very casual and comforting and welcoming to them, that they'll want to really share their information with you because they believe that you know something, and that's good. You know, that's something that you can use to help them.
Mm-hmm.